The news should be just that, the news. A media company that disregards sides and reports the facts. But it's almost never this way. As a news company, it's easy to get swept up and turned into a government propaganda machine. For example, pre-war Galaxy News Network got like that, having a clear pro-government bias. They aired a live execution of a foreign insurgent and presented it as keeping the peace in Canada. They spun a concerning story about the shellfish population growing in size due to toxic runoff into a story about how great the upcoming shellfish season will be. Finding a truthful, free, and unbiased news source, especially in the world of Fallout, is a doomed task. But there is one newspaper company that I believed managed this feat, and that is the Charleston Herald. I believe that the Charleston Herald, despite one reporter garnering some controversy, hate, and death threats, did a respectable job at removing bias in their publications, maintaining free speech, and shedding light on several inhumane corporations, including the United States' own federal government. I'll go over 3 articles that I believe highlight this. One of Appalachia's primary industries is mining. While the 2 mining families, Hornwright and Garahan, dominated much of the market, a third company, Atomic Mining Services, or AMS, was the industry leader for their breakthrough methods of extracting ore. But it wasn't their use of detonating atomic charges to dig deeper in old mines that enraged the public, no. West Virginia was used to these kinds of risks that were all too common in coal country. What enraged the public, leading to a Charleston Herald article being written about AMS, was their ruthless and frankly evil practices. The Charleston Herald published the article AMS Corporate Bully. The piece provides some insight into the company's dealings. It discusses how AMS was supposed to be the saviors of the exhausted mining towns, bringing employment and wealth to old mines that were thought to be mined dry. It then goes over AMS's gross mistreatment and abandonment of their new mining project, which led to even more poverty in the Mount Blair region. But that's not all. It then discusses AMS's hostile takeover of the town of Welch, claiming that the company held the resource rights to the land. AMS would use their armed security personnel to forcefully evict the residents of the impoverished town. In the Herald's never-ending search for the truth of the matter, they sent several reporters to the town to investigate. When confronted by the Free Press, AMS gave no comment, and the Herald reporters were promptly escorted out of the town by armed men. And while this expose seemed to result in nothing bad happening to Atomic Mining Services, outside of negative public opinion of course, Eleanor Tarquin's A Month of Madness would put one corrupt company out of business forever. In 2061, a journalist named Eleanor Tarquin decided to conduct an investigation into the practices of the local asylum. Posing as a patient needing treatment, Tarquin infiltrated Allegheny Asylum. The doctor there misdiagnosed and institutionalized Tarquin without any credible evidence. During her month-long stay, which was only supposed to be 10 days mind you, she reported that many patients were restrained for long periods of time. Treatment mostly consisted of patients being forcibly submerged in cold water, and many requests like an additional blanket or vegetarian meal options were outright denied. And so, when Tarquin was finally released after having to pay an exorbitant release fee, she sat down and wrote her tell-all article for the Charleston Herald. The shocking tales of what was really going on in Allegheny Asylum was on display for the world to see. As a result of the bad press and public outrage, the asylum was forced to close. And while this article, A Month of Madness by Eleanor Tarquin, demonstrated the Herald's fearlessness when going after evil companies, it's Quinn Carter's The Sam Blackwell interview that would nearly expose the pre-war enclave. Quinn Carter was an investigative journalist for the Charleston Herald. Shortly before the Great War, Carter received an invitation for an interview with the shamed Senator Samuel Blackwell, after he had mysteriously vanished from his government office. Hesitant about the invite being a prank, Carter called in a favor from the Charleston Police Department. The department's forensics team confirmed the fingerprints on the envelope matched Blackwell's. Carter met with a masked man and woman at the Berkeley Springs train station who put a bag over her head. To Carter, these people were clearly Blackwell and his daughter Judith. Together, the three would hike for roughly half an hour before the bag was removed and Carter could commence her interview. From the interview, Quinn Carter published the Sam Blackwell interview. The article reads, "Amidst mine riots, strikes, and the civil unrest of our time, there's one name on everyone's lips: Sam Blackwell. Blackwell started his public life as a union activist, brokering deals between disenfranchised miners and regional powerhouses like Garahan Mining and Hornwright Industrial. His star would only continue to rise during his re-election to the United States Senate, winning a staggering 73% of the popular vote. It would take the senator's open support for the Appalachian Free States movement, a group of local survivalists with separatist overtones, before his publicity would begin to wane. But as minor scuffles between the Free States and the police broke out into open violence, the senator's support for the Free States only grew, as did calls for his resignation. Then, seemingly without warning, the senator vanished. Calls to his Charleston office and home went unanswered. His daughter Judith stopped showing up for classes at VTU. Multiple search parties were organized by police and concerned citizens, but to no end. It was just 3 days ago that an unaddressed letter came across my desk, offering me an interview with the missing senator. Presuming it a hoax, I nonetheless accepted, but it was no hoax. In an exclusive interview, I visited with our controversial former senator in an undisclosed location. I asked Senator Blackwell why it was that he left the Senate, presuming the pressure from his constituents had caused him to become disenchanted with public service. But the senator had a far darker message than I could have ever expected. There are sinister forces at work in the halls of government. I simply could not be a part of that anymore. Pressed for details, Blackwell leveled accusations at the highest echelons of power: the U.S. Executive Branch, the Department of Agriculture, major corporations, all complicit in a shadowy conspiracy, and to whom the American citizen, in the senator's own words, are nothing but pawns in their sick games. His advice to the American people in the face of such a harrowing claim? The only recourse left to the average American is to flee the population centers, head into the wilderness, where one can at least find some hope of escaping the lurid gaze of those in government plotting against us. Throughout our conversation, the senator was composed, lucid, clear in his belief that everything he said, no matter how outlandish, was truth. Through an evening of shocking revelations, perhaps least surprising of all was the senator's resignation from the United States Senate. Consider this interview my personal resignation from the government and this nation. And with that, I was ushered out, left to wonder how much should be taken as ravings or as desperate pleas for the safety of his fellow Americans. After the article was published, Quinn, alongside the Charleston Herald, began getting threats from the public. Outraged, people began boycotting the paper. A letter from a group claiming to be the Charleston Citizens Against Corruption was mailed to the Charleston Herald office, calling both Blackwell and Carter traitors. The group demanded that people avoid buying the paper until either Carter was charged with conspiracy to commit treason or she gave up the whereabouts of the former senator. It got to a point where the federal government and Enclave got involved, with the Enclave dubbing Miss Carter as high priority in the hunt for Sam Blackwell. The Charleston Herald editorial board was forced to release a statement in support of Carter, claiming that her interview is protected under Appalachian law and supports the United States freedom of the press. In addition to the article supporting Carter, Herald executives bought her a gun and several hotel rooms for her own protection because of how bad the threats and demands got. I think the fact that Carter and the Herald received such a great amount of hate and threats, and not only kept Carter employed, but also continued to publish her work, goes to show that the Charleston Herald will do its best to remain free from bias and continue to report the truth, and only the truth. The Charleston Herald is a beacon of light in the dim universe of Fallout. Where other media outlets put out a massive propaganda, the Herald rightly touts themselves as one of the last remaining bastions of freedom of speech. Their unabashed criticism of a massive mining enterprise, their daring investigative practices into corrupt corporations, and their unflinching loyalty to those who expose the truth about their nation's leaders goes to show that the Charleston Herald is one of the few good companies in Fallout. And that's all from me today, folks. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
There are sinister forces at work in the halls of government. I and my fellow members of the free states will no longer be shackled to the putrefying corpse of this nation. No, nor should anyone who values their lives. There is only one recourse left for the people of the United States. Strike out on your own. Take whatever you can carry, get off the grid, and get there fast. The end is coming, Miss Carter. And when it does, your government has no interest in keeping you safe.